I always thought my wedding day would feel like a fairy tale. And for a moment, it really did. The music began, soft and full of promise, echoing through the decorated hall like something out of a dream. My heart was pounding, but in that excited, joyful way. Everyone I loved was there. My family, my friends, all smiling, waiting. I looked down at my dress, the one I'd spent months choosing, and I actually felt beautiful. Finally, after everything, I was about to marry the man I loved. Or at least, I thought I was. Just as the doors opened, something slammed against the silence. Heels, fast, loud. Then a voice, shrill and full of fury. "He's not marrying that bitch. He's marrying me." Gasps, murmurs, and suddenly, all those eyes that were waiting for me shifted toward her. A woman in a wedding dress. A wedding dress. My chest tightened, my hands went cold, and my perfect moment shattered like glass underfoot. It was Vanessa. I recognized her instantly. Daniel's ex, the one he swore was crazy and long gone. He always laughed when I brought her up, said she was obsessed, delusional. But there she was, standing in the middle of my wedding, wearing white and screaming. I turned to look at Daniel. My entire body was shaking, but I needed him to say something, to explain, to defend me. But he didn't move. Not one step. Not one word. And right then, everything inside me started to shift. It was surreal, like I'd left my own body and was just watching it all unfold from above. People started whispering, shifting in their seats, staring between me, her, and Daniel like they were watching some twisted soap opera. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But instead, I just stood there, frozen in the doorway, bouquet trembling in my hands. Part of me kept thinking, this can't be real. This can't be happening to me. And yet, every second that passed made it more undeniable. It was real. And worse, it wasn't even a surprise to him. Vanessa kept yelling, throwing out phrases like, "He promised," and "You're nothing to him." I heard someone in the back gasp again. A kid started crying. Someone's phone dropped and clattered on the floor. And Daniel? He just looked down. His face wasn't shocked. It was pale, yes, but not shocked. Not like someone caught off guard. I don't know what hurt more, the public humiliation or the quiet confirmation in his silence. I thought I knew him. I thought he was mine. But in that moment, I realized I didn't even know what kind of story I'd been living in. My maid of honor touched my elbow, whispered, "Do you want to leave?" But I shook my head. No, not yet. I wasn't going to be the one who ran. I wasn't going to give them that scene, the broken bride fleeing her own wedding. If there was truth to uncover, I wanted to hear it. Right there, right then. And maybe some small part of me hoped he'd redeem himself somehow, that he'd fight for me, that he'd tell her she was wrong and walk me down that aisle anyway. But what he said next told me everything I needed to know. He didn't shout. He didn't defend me. He didn't even look at me. He just muttered under his breath, "I didn't know she'd actually come." That's all. That was his response. No denial, no anger, no apology. And suddenly it all felt different. Like a curtain had been pulled back and I was seeing something raw and ugly behind the man I'd promised my future to. The woman in white? She wasn't just a ghost from his past. She was something current, something hidden, something fed. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I just gave him a long, slow stare. And in that silence, I watched his confidence shrink. My father stood up. My aunt was shaking her head in disbelief. And the photographer? Still clicking, like this chaos was part of the package. I stepped aside from the archway, my dress catching on the doorframe, and handed my bouquet to my maid of honor. The weight of those flowers felt suddenly ridiculous, like they belonged to someone else's love story. I didn't cry, not there, not in front of them. But inside me, something was cracking open. Not just pain, but a strange, sharp clarity. I needed answers, real ones. And I wasn't going to wait for him to offer them. That night, After the guests had left and the cake sat untouched in its box, I pulled him aside. I needed to know, who exactly had I almost married? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't throw anything. I just sat across from him in that cold, too-clean bridal suite, still in my wedding dress, and asked, "How long?" He blinked, like he didn't understand the question. "How long have you been lying to me?" I clarified, my voice low but shaking. That's when he started to fumble. Said he was sorry. Said he didn't expect Vanessa to go that far. And then, as if it made everything better, he shrugged and added, "We've only talked a few times." Only talked a few times. That phrase hit me harder than the screaming, harder than the dress. Because behind those 4 words was an entire web of half-truths, omissions, and private betrayals. I felt this cold wave crawl up my spine. My stomach knotted. He said it like it was nothing. Like emotional infidelity didn't count. Like I should be grateful he hadn't done more. And maybe before that day, I might have been tempted to believe him, to bend myself around his excuses. But something inside me had shifted. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I told him I needed space, and he left, still trying to kiss my cheek like this was some minor detour. But once I was alone, I did what I knew he never expected. I opened his phone. I went through his call logs, his messages, his payment history. And that's when I saw it all. The transfers to Vanessa, the private chats, the times he told me he was working late when he was really God knows where, with her. This wasn't a stalker. This wasn't a crazy ex. This was a carefully protected lie. There were messages going back months. Little things, flirty things. Things that made it clear she hadn't just shown up on a whim. She felt entitled to that altar. And now, I understood why. He hadn't closed that door. He left it cracked open, just wide enough to keep her hoping. She wasn't delusional. Not entirely. He fed that delusion. With attention, with money, with just enough intimacy to keep her clinging. And the worst part? He never once warned me. Never gave me the dignity of knowing who I was really up against. I sat there, surrounded by floral arrangements and untouched wedding favors, scrolling through evidence that my relationship had been built on half a foundation. I started to wonder, had I missed the signs? Was I so desperate to believe in us that I ignored what was right in front of me? I thought back to all the times I felt something was off. The defensiveness when I asked where he'd been, the vague answers, the overcompensating. I had chalked it up to stress, to men being men. But now it felt like willful blindness. I felt embarrassed, not just about what happened at the wedding, but about how long I let myself trust him. I remembered the version of me that picked out centerpieces while he sent money to another woman. That baked his favorite cake while he was texting her behind my back. My cheeks burned hot with humiliation, and something else started to creep in too. Something darker. I wasn't just heartbroken, I was angry. Furious, actually. But underneath the rage, something sharper was taking root. A plan. A shift. A different version of myself beginning to wake up. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at the edge of the bed, the same bed we were supposed to share as husband and wife, and I just stared at the wall. My phone was still in my hand, filled with screenshots. My dress hung on the door, now wrinkled and joyless. And slowly, somewhere between heartbreak and humiliation, I felt something settle inside me. Not despair, not yet. Just a dangerous kind of clarity. The kind that doesn't shatter, it sharpens. I wasn't going to let this be my ending. Not quietly, not kindly. I remembered something my mother used to say when I was younger, after my father cheated and left her in pieces. When you lose everything, you finally realize what you're capable of. I never understood that, until now. I hadn't just lost a man. I had lost my version of the truth. But in that loss, I also saw what he had underestimated. Me. He thought I'd break, maybe even beg. He thought I'd cling to the illusion, but he didn't know that I had inherited more than my mother's smile. I had inherited her fire. So I began. Not with revenge, not yet. With strategy. I made copies of everything. Organized the photos, the bank records, the messages, the timestamps. I wasn't sure yet what I'd do with them, but I knew one thing with absolute certainty: this wasn't over. And the next move? It would be mine. The next morning, I made him breakfast. Can you believe that? Eggs, toast, fresh coffee, like nothing had happened. He looked at me like I was a miracle, like he'd gotten away with it. "You're really staying?" he asked, his voice soft, hopeful. I gave him the smallest smile and said, "I just need time to think." And that was it. That was all it took. He relaxed. He kissed my forehead. He had no idea that the woman sitting across from him was no longer the bride he betrayed. She was someone else entirely now. I didn't scream. I didn't plot loudly. I made a plan in silence. He still thought the wedding was on, that we were just hitting a rough patch. But I was already 10 steps ahead. First thing I did was take full control of the wedding account. We'd opened it together, but he never paid attention to the details. I changed the passwords, moved the funds. Then I contacted every single vendor, the venue, the caterer, the florist, and had everything transferred to my name. Quietly, cleanly, without a single red flag to him. Every time he smiled at me, touched my back in that fake reassuring way, I nodded sweetly and took another mental note. I kept records of everything: the timeline, the lies, the transactions. I even started replying to Vanessa from an anonymous account. "He's marrying her because of the prenup," I wrote. "Want proof? Show up again." It didn't take much to stir her up. He'd already done most of that work himself. I wasn't trying to destroy him with fire. Not yet. I was setting the stage. And when the time came, I wanted the spotlight right where it belonged. The strange thing was how easy it was to fool him. He wanted so badly to believe I'd forgiven him that he practically coached himself into the lie. Every time I tilted my head a certain way, or let my hand rest on his arm for just a second too long, he melted. "I'm lucky you're still here," he said one night, pulling me close. I smiled into his shoulder, wondering how someone so manipulative could be so blind. But I knew now, men like him don't see the women they hurt. They only see the version that still serves them. While he lounged on the couch, watching reruns and calling vendors like he was still the groom, I was quietly rewriting the ending. I contacted the venue and changed the event, told them we were shifting to a private recommitment celebration, no ceremony. I wanted the stage, the guests, the music, everything just as it had been planned. But this time, the story would be mine. I didn't just want the truth to come out. I wanted it to ring out like a church bell, loud, clear, and right in front of the people who mattered most. Meanwhile, Vanessa was fuming in my inbox. She was sending screenshots, voice memos, even photos I didn't ask for, all of it dripping with desperation and rage. But I kept feeding her little pieces of bait, told her he was lying to both of us, told her he wasn't planning to leave me at all. Told her if she really wanted to be heard, she'd need an audience. I wasn't cruel. I didn't have to be. I just held up a mirror and let her reflection do the rest. And behind the scenes, I was building something bigger than revenge. By the end of that week, everything was in place. The guest list stayed the same. The flowers, the cake, the music, all untouched. I even reordered my dress in a slightly altered design. Not because I wanted to wear it for him, but because I wanted to reclaim it for me. I wasn't that girl from the first ceremony anymore. I wasn't walking toward a man. I was walking toward a moment, a truth, a version of myself that didn't beg or doubt or shrink, the version that finally saw her own worth and refused to apologize for it. I left nothing to chance. I double confirmed every vendor. I practiced what I might say, how I might say it. Not like a speech, but like truth poured straight from the bone. I imagined their faces, his face, Vanessa's, the hush of the room, the way eyes would shift and widen as pieces clicked into place. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't afraid. I was calm in a way I'd never known before. I think power feels a lot like stillness, not loud, not dramatic, just steady, quiet, certain. The night before the new event, I watched him sleep next to me, so peaceful, so unaware. And I knew in my gut that by this time tomorrow, he'd never see me the same way again. None of them would, because the girl who almost married him, she was already gone. I arrived early that day, before the guests, before the music, before even the staff had finished setting up. I stood in the middle of the room, same venue, same soft lighting, same aisle lined with roses. But this time, it felt different. Not sacred, not romantic. It felt like a stage. Like a place where something true was finally going to unfold. I took a slow breath and looked around. Every detail was exactly as it had been before. The only difference was me, and the story I was about to tell. When the guests started arriving, they greeted me with warm smiles and kind eyes. Some whispered things like, "You're so strong," or "We're so glad you're giving it another shot." Let them think what they wanted. That was the point. I didn't correct anyone. I let the illusion hang in the air like perfume. Sweet, deceptive, beautiful. Daniel showed up last, just like before, wearing the same smug confidence. He kissed my cheek, wrapped an arm around my waist, and whispered, "Let's try again." I smiled. He still didn't know the show wasn't for us. And then, right on cue, the doors flew open. There she was, Vanessa. Again. This time she wasn't just screaming. She had evidence. Printed texts, screenshots, bank records, all waved in the air like a woman on fire. "You told me you'd leave her after the honeymoon," she shouted, her voice ragged, shaking. A collective gasp rippled through the room. The music stopped. The tension cracked open. Daniel's face went white, and for one delicious moment all I had to do was stand there. People turned to me, expecting shock, confusion, maybe even tears, but I didn't flinch. I stepped forward, took the mic from the stand like it was waiting for me, and let the room settle into silence. I could feel the weight of their stares, family, friends, co-workers, all of them frozen in that awkward, stunned stillness. Even Vanessa stopped mid-rant, papers trembling in her hands. Daniel looked like a boy caught cheating on a test, eyes darting, lips parting, but no sound coming out. And that's when I spoke. "I know," I said, just 2 words. And they landed like a crack of thunder. I knew everything. A few people audibly gasped. I could feel my hands shaking slightly, but I held steady. I knew she'd come today. I invited her. I wanted you all to see this, not because I needed your pity, but because I needed your clarity. Because when lies live in the dark, they grow. But when you drag them into the light, they die. I turned to look at Daniel then, really look at him, and he couldn't even meet my eyes. And then I turned to Vanessa. "You were never the villain. You were part of the lie just like I was. You thought he chose you. I thought he chose me. The truth is, he never chose anyone but himself." She looked stunned, speechless, her anger melting into something that resembled grief. And me? I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because I humiliated him. That wasn't the point. But because I had taken back the story, on my terms, with truth, with grace. With every shattered piece, finally laid out for all to see. I turned back to the guests, took a long breath, and raised the champagne glass that had been waiting on the podium. "To honesty," I said, letting the word hang there for a beat, "even when it comes late." A few people smiled, unsure. Others nodded slowly, but most just watched, silent, wide-eyed, as the ceremony they thought would end in vows turned into something else entirely. A truth-telling, a release, a reckoning. There was no applause, no bouquet toss, no kiss to seal anything. Just me, standing tall in a dress no longer meant for a wedding. Daniel didn't say a word. He just stood there, exposed, dismantled in front of the people he once fooled with charm. His mother covered her mouth. His best man looked away. He tried to move toward me, but I raised a hand. Not to be dramatic, just to be done. "There's nothing left to explain," I told him. You already said everything, with your silence. And with that, I walked away from the altar, not as a bride, but as a woman who'd reclaimed her voice. The doors opened behind me, and I didn't look back. I didn't need to. That chapter had closed, publicly, clearly, and on my own terms. The chaos, the heartbreak, the months of pretending, it was over. And while they were still standing there stunned, trying to piece together what had just happened, I was already thinking about what came next. Because this wasn't the end. Not even close. In the weeks that followed, I disappeared from everything. Social media, group chats, even the bridal returns hotline. I needed silence, stillness. I stayed with a friend near the coast, where the air smelled like salt and second chances. Every morning, I took a walk by the water, barefoot in the sand, letting my body remember what peace felt like. I didn't check his messages. I didn't respond to hers. The story was already told. Now I needed space to write a new one where I wasn't defined by betrayal. It's strange how grief can soften and sharpen you at the same time. Some mornings I missed the idea of us, the future I'd imagined, the version of him I had loved, but I never missed him. What I grieved was the part of me that had wanted so badly to be chosen. I ignored every warning sign. I was done chasing that version of love. I started therapy. I read books about boundaries. I even enrolled in a business course, just because I could. For the first time in years, I was building something just for me, not for a man, not for a wedding. And slowly, something beautiful began to take shape. What started as a healing project turned into a purpose. A wedding consultation firm, but not the typical kind. I helped women who needed out, women whose big day had turned into something toxic, manipulative, unsafe. We created exit strategies, rewrote timelines, and made room for dignity in places where shame once lived. I called it second vows, because every woman deserves to make a promise, but first to herself. Word spread quickly. I started getting emails from women I'd never met, brides, ex-wives, even mothers of the bride, all with stories of their own. Some heartbreaking, some infuriating, some eerily similar to mine. They weren't looking for pity. They were looking for permission, to walk away, to start over, to take the veil off and finally see clearly. And I gave them that. Not as someone who had all the answers, but as someone who had survived the same fire. There's something powerful about saying, "me too," and really meaning it. As for Daniel, I never heard from him again. Not directly. But I did hear things. That his company let him go after internal audits exposed some shady expense reports. That his parents stopped answering his calls. That his circle, once so charmed by his charisma, had quietly distanced themselves. I didn't celebrate it, not out loud. But I won't lie, there was a strange satisfaction in knowing that the truth had done what I couldn't. It stuck, it spread, and it left a mark deeper than any speech I could have made. And Vanessa? She disappeared too. After the second wedding, she was humiliated, not just by him, but by how deeply she'd let herself believe his version of reality. I don't blame her anymore. I don't feel pity either. I just feel done. We were both passengers in his story, but I was the one who climbed out and started writing my own. That's all that matters now. Months later, I walked into this tiny coffee shop on a rainy afternoon, not expecting anything. I'd just finished a meeting with a new client, a woman leaving her fiancé 3 weeks before the wedding, and all I wanted was a strong cup of coffee and a moment to breathe. But there he was, not Daniel, someone else, someone kind-eyed with a book in one hand and a mug in the other. He looked up and smiled, not like he wanted something from me, but like he saw me, really saw me. We talked. Nothing big, nothing cinematic. Just two people sharing a table, laughing over the same terrible weather. And for once, I didn't feel the need to impress or perform. I wasn't trying to be lovable. I was just being myself, scarred, strong, still healing. He asked what I did, and I told him. He nodded, impressed, but not intimidated. "Helping women escape the wrong wedding," he said. "That's got power." I smiled. "It's what I needed once," I replied. And he just said, "I'm glad you got out." That's the thing no one tells you. Sometimes your love story doesn't begin until after your worst heartbreak. Sometimes it starts in the quiet, after the storm has passed, when you're finally ready to be loved, not for who you pretended to be, but for who you became. I didn't walk away from my wedding alone. I walked away with something better. Me.